对于这个领域有什么的计划？好的，首先我要
us here for this space panel among the STEAM's panelists. First of all, today is a remarkable day for us in Saudi Space Agency. We signed an agreement with WEF to establish Center for Space Future. This center is focusing on multiple things that will help to establish a global platform to engage more both public and private sector in the discussions, to make sure that we are coming together and putting our hands together to make sure that we engage in the space economy futures. When it comes to your questions, definitely any nation is going for space there for multiple reasons. From economical perspective, countries looking for diversification of the economy. In Saudi Arabia, we have one of the primary things in our ambitious Vision 2030 to diversify our economy. And to do that, we have to go for like strategic sector with ambitious and expected high growth in its return. One of these sectors is a space economy. And let me put you with some of the context in the space economy. As Samir said, today we are the space economy value around 630 billion. It's expected to increase with a CAGR of 9%. That's to reach around 2 trillion by 2035. This is a lot when it comes to growth compared to adjacent sector. And it's the right time right now to bring the discussion between public, private sector, mainly within this era of transitioning between government-centric space sector to a private-centric. So diversification of the economy is one of them. The other one is innovation driver. Any country is looking for space, and I think this is globally and historically space become like a symbol of some scientific development and aspiration. And let me talk about Saudi Arabia. Last year when we launched our program in the human space flight, Rayana Barnawi and Al Garni, they went to the ISS. We noticed that within Saudi Arabia, lots of kids, they want to be scientific. They want to study and learn more about STEM program. It's not only also Saudi Arabia, even within the region. Recently, we launched a competition between students between year of 6 to 18 across 22 Arab state countries with the support of MISC Foundations and also my friend Cam in Axiom. We are targeting to have like 2,000 to 3,000 registration in this competition. And we are expecting to have maximum 1,000 complete submission because there is lots of technical things they should fulfill to make sure this competition, after we send it to the ISS, it's fitting technically. Guess what? We received more than 70,000 applications to date, more than 11,000 complete submissions, and that shows the value of space as innovation driver. The last thing is entrepreneurship. Definitely there is a huge shift right now when it comes to space sector, as I said, from government-centric to private-centric. That follows up with entrepreneurship momentum. Here in Saudi Arabia, we launched a space accelerator entrepreneurship program. We registered 15 countries from 15 companies from 9 different countries. And aside from that one, in 2023, there is lots of momentum when it comes to venture capital. Although globally, there is a declining minus 38% when it comes to venture capital globally. In space, over the last 5 years, there is a huge increase in the venture capital to space, more than 30% annual growth over the last 4 years. So here in Saudi Arabia, last year, we have the global second largest venture capital in a space company globally, and we are proud of that one. So again, I would like to thank WIF for having us today. We announce the Center for Space Future. It's a global platform. We're looking for everyone's contributions. The website is up and running right now. Your contribution is really important for that one to make sure that we're achieving our goals.
Well, that's very interesting, the thoughts, the plans which Saudi Arabia has and some of the projects you mentioned and the potential. And I want to get Mr. Ghaffarian in here, because when it comes to this sector, you're really a pioneer in many ways, and of course, a serial entrepreneur, because you've done so much work. I want to begin talking about this role of the private sector, because not too long ago, when you looked at the space industry, it was the domain dominated completely by the government and public sector companies. But now that's changing. A lot of private companies are coming in and are working closely in some cases, and sometimes doing their own innovation and projects. Run us through the importance of the private sector and what kind of role they can play in terms of enhancing the economic value of the space sector.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And by the way, congratulations, Your Excellency, for Center for Space Future. And I think what a great and innovative idea, and I'm really excited to be part of it. You're right. For a long time, the space primarily belonged to the governments. Of course, because it was such an expensive endeavor to be involved with. But I think with the advent of commercial space companies, things are changing dramatically, I think, for the better. It's, in many ways, I believe it's accelerating the overall space exploration and space economy. And I also believe that is a force multiplier. If you have just the government agency funding this, you just have within that domain that things are being done. And now, at least in the United States, NASA, for example, no longer want to be the landlord. They want to be a tenant. So if you sort of look at things that happened recently, even with SpaceX and Axiom Space, with the space station, and also my other company, Intuitive Machine, where we were incredibly proud to be the first private company in the history of humankind landing on the surface of the moon just recently, about a month and a half ago. NASA is buying services. So you're buying a rocket to take you to space, and you're using the private sector to invest and find things to do in a very much innovative way. I just want to touch on this in terms of the economies of scale that can happen. We landed on the moon by sort of conceiving, designing, building, operating, and landing on the surface of the moon a period of 4 years with $118 million. So sometimes scarcity brings innovation, right? And so we could do a lot more with less. Whereas I think if this was with the government, probably would have cost a lot more money and probably take a lot longer. But at the end of the day, the government is sort of buying the services for us to deliver cargo from the surface of the Earth to the surface of the moon for a fixed price. The same thing with rockets, the same thing with the space station. For a long time, the International Space Station sort of was belonged with the partners, United States, Russia, European countries, Japan, and Canada. And now private sector is sort of getting into that and creating this. And competition also is great because there are many companies that are involved. And competition brings innovations because you're thinking about how you can do things better for less. So all of this, I think, creates this more innovation, more acceleration, and overall really contributes significantly to future of space economy and space exploration.
I want to get in Ms. Huby there because, again, your company is another very interesting company in Europe that's doing some path-breaking stuff on that front. And as Mr. Ghaffarian was talking about the contribution that the private sector can make in terms of enhancing the economic opportunities and value. How do you see the market evolving from a private company point of view? And how critical do you think is it to open up this sector in terms of competition and choice?
So thank you very much first for having me. It's a great pleasure and honor. And it's also amazing to see the ambition of Saudi Arabia in this sector. The population is very young, and when you're young, you have dreams. And space, of course, brings dreams and the capacity actually to realize them. And I'm very impressed that you are unleashing that with flying a Saudi astronaut that you've flown through Axiom, and also creating this center. And we are very happy to contribute also here because we signed an agreement with RDIA and will launch also a competition to fly experiment on our space capsule. So with that, at the Exploration Company, we're building space capsule, so big capsule, and we hopefully will be able to bring to Axiom Space Station around about 4-ton payload up, 3-ton payload down, and then the second step, humans. There are very few capsules in the world. Right now, 3 capsules in the whole world, one in China, one in Russia, and one in the United States. So we believe there is room for a bit more, especially because the market indeed, and that was your question, is growing. In our opinion, it will become easier and easier to build infrastructure in space because the rockets are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So with Starship, one launch of Starship, one infrastructure. And we are seeing this growth of infrastructure around the Earth, this growth of infrastructure around the Moon. And so the market for us is this, okay, it's very nice to build infrastructure, but how do you go there? And it's actually very difficult. So there'll be very, very few players in the world actually really able to build this transportation infrastructure with affordability and reliability. So that's what we're doing, really focusing on transportation. Coming to the private sector, I think it has proven that it's a great way to unleash innovation capability, accelerate speed, and reduce cost. I want here to bring a few examples. You mentioned the Apollo mission. In our case, so building a capsule, we're going to launch 24th of June, our very first capsule. It was built in 9 months for less than 2 million euro. The second one will be launched next year. It will have been built for around about 20 million in 2.5 years. And then the last one, the final one, will be launched in 27. So that speed, if I compare to metrics in Europe, we're around about 3 times faster and 20% cheaper than what has been built before, because doing that privately funded is very simple. You need to go fast or you die. And what's also very interesting is from a public perspective, public, like European Space Agency, NASA, doesn't have to fund the whole development cost. It's exactly the beauty of the service contract. When we receive a service contract from the European Space Agency, and I'm very happy to announce here that we actually won the competition organized by European Space Agency. We ranked #1, ahead of Thales, ahead of Airbus. So we are right now the #1 ranked company to build capsule in Europe. Well, when we win a service contract, let's say 100 million, we can use that service contract to raise additional money. So this 1 million is worth 500 million actually, because based on this first service contract, then investors, of course, believe that there is an anchor client and then give you more and more money for the company. So from a public perspective, the public investors, they get more speed, they get companies which are less expensive, and their investment is leveraged by private investors. I think that's the beauty of what we're seeing now in space.
That's very interesting, especially the cost bit, which you mentioned, how you've been able to launch those capsules at a fraction of a cost what probably a government agency would have taken. And I want to bring in Ms. De Pipo over there to give us a sense that you're seeing so much happening in this sector suddenly. Private players are getting very active. The government is launching, government-owned agencies are launching so many ambitious projects. How important is it now for countries to have a space strategy? And how crucial is it even for businesses to look at the sector more seriously and come up with a strategy?
Well, first of all, allow me to join my fellow panelists to congratulate His Excellency Al-Tamimi for this great, let's say, achievement. Well, we know each other since long, and I was sure that this was the way to go, and I'm happy to be here today also to celebrate this event. If I may try to wrap up what was said in a way, at the very beginning of the astronautical era, which means several decades ago, the space industry was not there. because, no one did anything before the first satellite was put in orbit. And so the state, the governments, with public funds, had to help industries to, let's say, to get to know how to do things, how to develop new technologies. If you have a challenge in front of you, if you have to develop, for example, technologies to go and explore Saturn, or land on a comet, for example. Just few examples of few missions have been taken part in. Well, you need really to develop new technologies, and indeed, space agencies, as the expression, let's say, as the tool for the governments to develop these technologies, and then also the industries that at that time, what is called now the old space in a way, but we can discuss about old, new, okay, fine. In reality, they were implementing strategies put together by the governments and by the countries. What is happening right now is still part of, for each country, of a clear strategy of the government and the space agency. So you cannot develop the private sector or the commercial space sector without a clear strategy. As Ellen was mentioning, in reality, they have a service contract which is helping them to do what they have to do, so find the money on the market. And if we look at what happened when Elon Musk started the activity, it was exactly the same. So he got, for example, for Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule, well, part of the, let's say, the money for the development, but also a service contract for 12 operational missions. So with that contract, so NASA did exactly the same just a few years before. So this means that the state has an important role, and the strategies are key also, and in particular, for the commercial sector to strive. Otherwise, if you don't have a clear picture of where the country wants to go, it would be difficult to do something like, for example, Axiom and the other countries are doing. Well, one of the points is that the state is changing hat every time. So sometimes is the entrepreneur, sometimes is the user, sometimes is a facilitator. But all of this has to be put in a framework, and it's, in a way, underlining a very strong and solid strategy. So, and for example, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a clear, let's say, explanation of that. So clear strategy where they want to go and all the steps to go in that direction. And this is encompassing both fully publicly funded activities together with a lot of, let's say, commercial boosted activities. One of the things that is extremely important to notice is that in all of this strategy, we have to look carefully at international cooperation. So as I always say, space is diplomacy by definition. The International Space Station is an example, but if I may, talking about the Axiom Space Station, well, it's another way of, putting forward international cooperation at its best. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that the commercial side of it doesn't have to be international. And so what we see now is a different balance of the public and the private sector altogether, depending on the type of goal and objective you have. So it's a very good and exciting moment, if I may, also from the standpoint of international cooperation and strategy.
So, Mr. Noguchi, you've been, how it feels like to be up there in space. So give us a sense of that, and also the point which Ms. DePipo was making about international cooperation. How important is that for this sector to evolve and simultaneously also offer economic opportunities?
Okay, Sami, thank you. Thank you very much for a kind introduction. And I'd like to join the bag on celebrating the Saudi Arabia Space Agency to start a new center for the space future. And I'm proudly serve as one of the committee member for the Saudi Arabia Space Agency. So I'm very happy to see the advancement of the Saudi Arabia in space. Talk about the international cooperation, yeah, that's very important. And before I get to that, since we're in the World Economic Forum, we talk about the economy. WEF recently submitted the Insight report. That's $1.8 trillion that Samir earlier mentioned has come from that report, and some of us have contributed to the report. And those report, $1.8 trillion, we established 4 different pillars. That's the utilization, Earth ops, and constellation, the satellite constellation, and the international cooperation. So those 4 things is the important key to understand why we are forecasting this rapid growth. So everything goes down to Earth, not just to the astronauts, by the way. So those numbers contribute to the advancement of the people on the ground. That's where the international cooperation comes into play. And His Excellency recently mentioned about the recent Saudi Arabian astronaut, the Layana and Al-Karini. They have a huge boost in the Saudi Arabia, but he obviously mentioned it also gives a huge interest in the Gulf region, all the Arabic countries. And we have seen the similar type of boost all around the world in the last 10 to 20 years. When the Sweden astronauts first launched into space, we see the big boost in Northern Europe. And when Malaysia launched the first astronaut, all these South Asian countries, they're interested in space as well. Brazil as well, South Korea as well. And now the time is coming to the Arabic countries to join these huge groups of international cooperation in the space technology.
Your Excellency, coming to, what you were mentioning earlier about the projects and the plans that Saudi Arabia has, and the importance as far as the economy goes. What do you think, which are the sectors or industries that would benefit the most in the kingdom as you go ahead with these plans? Where do you see the maximum benefit coming from?
So let me first second my colleagues the importance of the strategy. And if you go for any countries and study their strategy, even outside space, definitely you will find it's related to space, whether it's logistic, whether it's agriculture, and other. And in fact, yesterday there is 2 discussions about, one of them about agriculture, the other one about logistic, and both of them link directly to the space. And let's agree that space application have a huge impact for the global economy, and more specifically about sectorial economy. And let me share with you a few examples. Satellite services right now, it will be hard right now to find a logistic strategy or remote sensing strategy without link it to space activity. Another example, which is space-based power. There is a concept of collecting space energy, solar energy in the space in orbital altitude, and transmit it wirelessly to the Earth. That is a breakthrough technology that's clean and renewable, and that will change and disrupt the solar energy power. So if we ask ourselves, does that change the governmental plan? Yes. If you study the globe, 70 space agencies been established over the last 20 years. How about the private sector? Yes, that's also changed. Over the last 5 years, as I said, although after COVID, there is lots of challenges for venture capital to be raised, space continuously to be more than 30% increase in the investment. Why is that happening? Due to multiple factors. One of them is the barrier to access this sector. For example, the launch cost. over the last 25 years, we noticed that there is almost 10-fold reduction in launch cost. In 1995, based on the recent study, to launch 1 kilogram to the space, it cost around $35,000. Right now, it's $1,500. And it's estimated that this cost will go as low as $10 by 2040. That's a huge reduction that will increase the appetite for entrepreneurs to enter the market. And it's not only launch cost only, even satellite manufacturing cost. Over the coming 7 years, all the studies indicate that there will be a reduction of 70% of the cost of satellite manufacturing. And that's also not incentivizing only the private sector or entrepreneur. Even the mega project, if I could call them, like constellations of satellite. Over the last 60 years, the globe witnessed launching of around 12,000 satellites. Over the coming 6 years only, we are expecting to launch 36,000 satellites. And let me put it in this perspective, 3x amount of satellite in 6 years only compared to 60 years. That's a lot of satellite being launched. That's also lots of great opportunity for both big companies and the small entrepreneurs company. That's why, from my perspective, there will be huge impact of space economy. This is the right time to discuss space under WEF umbrella. And that's why we're really proud today to announce the Center for Space Future to discuss. It's a global platform. It's for everyone to collaborate, to put our hands, to bring both public, private, academia, and scientific to achieve our dream and goals to flourish the space economy.
Mr. Ghaffarian, you heard those plans, and I want to get a sense from you about the way the sector is growing now. And as it's important to have a strategy, which we heard earlier, a focus, whether it's a private company or whether it's a country. How do you see, from your point of view, from the work you're doing, space stations, setting them up, how do you see that growing in particular that sector? Because that, again, is going to play a crucial role, right, in terms of making sure that there is growth and there's more you can do. And also, if I can add quickly, just to give a sense to the audience that might be interested, what kind of activities will we be able to do in space as you know, these new projects come up?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I just want to share this with you. When I was about a month and a half ago at our launch site for going to the moon, I gave a talk. And I just want to share a little bit of that with you because that was really important. What I predicted is that maybe within the next 30 years or so, maybe 30, 35 years, the space economy and space exploration is going to grow so rapidly that we probably will have hourly launches to what I call a space city. Not just a space station, but a space city 250 miles above Earth where people actually can live and work. And you have maybe artificial gravity and, you know, schools and children and everything else. Habitat, where new technologies are being developed that impacts humanity on day-to-day basis.
So hang on, you're saying we could see schools in space?
Absolutely.
And in 30 years you see that?
I'm talking about the space city, right?
Yeah.
Not just, you know, a station.
Yeah.
That's by the way, our vision and Axiom Space that ultimately we're going to be involved in building that space city. And I also predicted that we will have maybe daily launches to the moon where we will have a habitat and people actually living and working and, you know, helps with the economic interest, technological interest. And I also believe that is part of our human DNA to explore. And so explore not only the moon, Mars, but even go beyond our solar system. And, you know, I also predicted that maybe we have monthly launches, right, to Mars. and again, having a habitat on the surface of Mars with technological advancement and living and working. And my dream personally is that maybe we will have one day quarterly trips to outside our solar system to other stars, because my personal belief is that as vast as the universe is, that the ultimate destiny for humanity go to stars. And just give you a sense of what I mean is, and how small we are in the context of the universe, is if we leave our solar system, we are in our galaxy called Milky Way. The distance from one point of our galaxy to the other is 100,000 light years. 100,000 light years, okay? The closest star to us is 4.25 light years away, called Proxima Centauri. And if we go with, say, nuclear technology, it would take us 2,000 years to get there. And just in our galaxy alone, there are 400 billion stars, just like our sun, with planets orbiting around them. So, 400 billion, and imagine so many more billions planets around them. And now we know that many of them might be exoplanets that might be able to hold a life. And now we know, this is sort of mind-blowing, that if we leave our galaxy and we are in the universe with the help of James Webb Space Telescope and Hubble Space Telescope, that there are 2 trillion other galaxies, okay? 2 trillion other galaxies, and some of them maybe 1 million times larger than our own. So, so that's why I think that that the ultimate destiny for us to go to stars, and so to be able to put that stake in the ground and say we need to do all the intermediate steps to get there, right? And I think the first step is really the space station. This is the closest distance to Earth, and eventually Moon and Mars, and be able to do all the other things. But economically, just getting to the core of your question, lots of people ask, why go to space? We have so many problems on Earth here. Why don't we deal with those issues? Actually, so many problems can be solved from microgravity or space that not many people know about. I mean, can you imagine that maybe one day we might be able to cure cancer, okay, from a space station? I mean, today we have the ability, because of the microgravity, to print corneas and retinas in space. I mean, we can do it on Earth, but because of the gravity, the molecules don't go where they're supposed to. Where in a low Earth orbit, the molecules naturally go where they're supposed to. Or do space manufacturing, or like, for example, fiber optics. We can do it on Earth today, but they're not maybe perfectly suited for carry infrared signals. In space, again, because of microgravity, we'll be able to do that. And so many other technologies. Can you imagine maybe one day that we come up with the anti-aging or reverse aging technologies in space? And why do I say that? Because when we go to space, the aging gets accelerated very, very slightly. And we believe that might have something to do with our T cells. So if we know why it gets accelerated, maybe we can find ways to slow it down and reverse it. So there are things that's happening and is growing. And by the way, I just want to say this. I think the prediction of 1.8 trillion, in my opinion, we're underestimating. I think this is with at the ground floor, and I think this is going to accelerate in a more massive way. By the way, if you looked at search engines and predictions early on, we underestimated. 10 years ago, if we were talking about AI, we were underestimating. I think the same thing is happening with the space exploration, and it's going to grow rapidly. But it really impacts everyday life. And the other piece of this, I have one of our astronauts, Eitan Sibi, from Israel that is here, and many students from, he was part of our AX-1 mission from Israel tuned in and we're inspired. The same thing in Saudi Arabia. We took the first astronaut from Turkey ever, and the whole country was tuned in and was inspired. So think about just like I was 11 years old when Neil Armstrong landed, surfaced the moon, and it was a transformational moment in my life, and I've created multiple commercial space companies. Think about all the students in Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Italy, Sweden, all around the world that are going to be inspired by things that we're doing, and they're all going to create companies and create economic growth and come up with technologies that advance the state of humanity and human knowledge.
Well, I mean, some of the stuff is fascinating. Schools going to stars, launching, missions to the moon every day, mind-boggling. And Ms. Dipipo, I will have to get you in here. If this is how this sector is going to grow, and as His Excellency was saying that 36,000 satellites would be launched in the next 6 years, that is massive compared to 12,000 what we have seen so far. There comes a challenge as well with it, that how do you ensure sustainable growth? Which ensures safety measures in place and inclusive growth as well. So how do you see that issue, how important is that issue to be addressed as the sector sees humongous growth going ahead?
Well, first of all, I would like to add something on what was mentioned just now. And I fully agree on the fact that the previous simulations on the, let's say, the potential growth for space economy globally were telling us that by 2040 we were supposed to reach 1 trillion. Now we say, and it's even conservative, that we will reach 1.8 by 2035. The point is that if you look at the definition of space economy, and we all use the OECD definition, which means that we have to consider the space sector itself. So the sector, I mean, rockets, satellites, ground segment, etc., plus all the value created by the use of space-based data and infrastructures for improving the quality of life of the citizens. So, as it was mentioned, in practice, everywhere. So you understand that this estimation is in reality provides a figure which is underestimated by definition, because we collectively are not able yet to measure all the value created by what we are doing in space. So the 1.8 trillion is for sure underestimated. So just to be, let's say, to reinforce the concept. Now, the point is that since I've been for 8 years the director of the Office for Outer Space Affairs at the UN, by definition, and I've been working on the space station as director of human spaceflight at the European Space Agency. Well, for me, international cooperation is mandatory. I mean, I cannot think about anything in space and in general without thinking about international cooperation. Which means that also if you have a global challenge, like the fact that you are getting orbits, at least the lowered orbits, contested and congested because it's really crowded up there, well, for sure you need a globally coordinated mechanism. Now, we have rules of the road for cars. We have a specialized agency of the UN, which is ICAO, to regulate the traffic in a way, or put, let's say, on the table the rules for aviation. Now, in principle, it should be easy, quote and unquote, to do the same for space, in principle. And believe me, even if we will have thousands and thousands of satellites launched in the next coming years, if you look at the policy brief on space, on the future of space, issued last year by the UN Secretary General, there is an interesting, let's say, graph which says that by 2028, we will have more than 1.1 million satellites in orbit. And again, in my opinion, this is an underestimation of what is going to happen. And so, in particular, in low Earth orbit, it will be really crowded, and the number of maneuvers to avoid collisions will increase, and with that, the costs the associated costs for the operators will increase accordingly. So it's also in the interest of the commercial operators to push the governments to find a way of, having common ground, a global understanding on what to do. The reason why it's not easy is because space is still, and I have nothing against it, but it's still a way of showing the political power of a certain country. So the geopolitical positioning is also linked to that, right? And so this means that sometimes in certain considerations that are put on the table at the UN level, not necessarily only the technical issues are discussed. Now, I don't want to enter into too many details, but the point is we do need the rules of the road. I strongly believe that the commercial sector will be pushing a lot to get these rules of the road, the sooner the better. At the UN level, they are working hard on that, and in particular in September this year, I believe during the high-level week of the General Assembly, the Secretary General called for the Summit of the Future, and among all the other topics, space and global governance is at stake. So I believe it's a question of putting all the elements together, all the stakeholders, governments, countries, the commercial sector, the civil society, and also academy. All together, I believe we can try to make it work.
Try to make it work. I've got the last 2 minutes, 3 minutes to go, so I want to get in Ms. Hubie and Mr. Noguchi to also share their comments. Ms. Hubie, we heard a lot of stuff of what can happen and what's going to happen in the space. Where do you see your company, and where would you want to see your company in, let's say, 5 to 10 years from now? What kind of work they would be wanting to be doing?
So, and I share also the viewpoint of Kim. For all of that to happen at the end of the day, we need transportation. No people can be sent to space station, no satellite can be sent if there is no transportation capabilities. This is where we focus on. And it's clear that because of who we are as humans, we will explore, we will build, and we will build to explore, and we'll build to serve the Earth. So for me, what's really important is the how we do that. And this is the core of the mission of the exploration company. We want to make space, we want to build space worlds which are accessible, which are sustainable, and which are cooperative. So the way I see our company in, let's say, 5-7 years, we'll not only have a capsule, but we'll have also a launcher, so we'll have an end-to-end transportation capability that will be available for as many countries in the world. The way we're right now starting to design our launcher is that it shall be able to land and to launch in as many countries as possible, so super scalable, and built in cooperation. And I think this is what the governments were doing. Now we see more and more tensions in the world, and this is where the private companies can bring something different, because we have more freedom, somehow we have more time, so our impact is not about the next election. We can think 20, 30 years ago, and I think we have a great responsibility in the way we build space to build it in a cooperative manner. So,
Mr. Noguchi, the last word to you. We have run out of time completely. Mr. Ghaffarian was talking about a STARS mission. Would you like to be on that sometime in the future? But jokes apart, lots happening in the space. What do you think, one last word, the biggest disruption you see coming in the years to come?
Okay, just my last 30 seconds. You know, we talk a lot, very good discussion. I'd be happy to be on the panel today. Talk about the economy, talk about the low orbit usage. Just give me just one topic. Yeah, this year is an exciting year for the lunar human space flight. Artemis Accord, over 20 countries are joined together to bring the people to the lunar surface. And my dearest friends, my pilot, Victor Ike will be on the lunar orbit next year. And this month, President Joe Biden I was kindly surprised that he announced that the Japanese will be the first non-American to set foot on the moon. But the issue is not who is going to the moon, what we're going to do on the lunar surface. Hopefully it's sustainable and more viable, and hopefully in the next few years we're going to talk about how we can utilize the lunar surface in a sustainable way.
In a sustainable way. Those are good words to end this discussion on. Well, so much. We could have gone on for another half an hour or 1 hour. There's so much to discuss, really. We're just really scratching the surface, but some very interesting insights from this distinguished panel. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and giving us a sense of what could the future look like. Maybe we could be going to school or university over there, as Mr. Ghaffarian says. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for joining us today.